Hello and welcome to the second part of our tutorial on making music for GB Studio using Milky Tracker. I'm super excited because in this installment we're actually going to start recording some sounds for our tune. Before we do though, there's a couple of things that I just want to go over in terms of how songs are actually organized in Milky Tracker. If you look at the top left here, you'll see a couple of columns, and these tell you information about the actual length of your song. So you see here that we have a song of length 01 at present, and if we press the plus button we can actually add to the length of the song, taking it up for example now to length 4. And what we've actually done here is we've repeated the current sequence or pattern. This is the pattern number in the second column, 00, which we're currently editing. If I pick one of these rows, I can actually change which sequence I'm editing by pressing the plus button. So now I will be editing pattern number 1. And we can actually organize the structure of our song here by changing which pattern comes in which order. So here we'll be starting with pattern 0, then going on to 0, 1, another pattern of 0, another loop of 0, 1, and then finishing back on 0, 0. And that's essentially how things are organized. Let's take it back to length 1, where we're just going to be dealing with one length of the first sequence. Now, for those of you who may have used traditional music recording software before, like Reaper or Audacity or Pro Tools or whatever, normally things are organized recording from left to right. And it does take a little bit of time to get your brain around the fact that trackers go a different way. Things are kind of transposed and you're going vertically rather than horizontally. And that does take a little bit of time to get used to. It took me a while to get my head around it. The way that I would think about it is that each of these rows is essentially like a beat in a bar, and you can see that the first beat in the bar is highlighted in the yellow color, and it would be and each repeat then for each bar, the first beat of each bar is in yellow. So it would be a 1 2 3 4, next bar 2 3 4, next bar 2 3 4. Just like in any other kind of musical notation, it's just flipped differently. So let's start then by recording drums. Why do I start with percussion? Well, I find it much easier to compose a song if I've got a bit of a rhythm behind it. I find it gives me a bit of structure to kind of lay things on top of. So which channel, moreover, are we going to be using? We're going to be using channel 4. This is the effects channel. I'll just call it the drum channel. And then we're obviously going to need to use an instrument that's allowed in channel 4. So you need to scroll down to at least instrument 10, where the channel 4 instruments start, and we're actually going to be using instrument 11 here. One more thing to mention, just quickly browsing back to the GB Studio document, there are a number of limitations for each of the channels in terms of which notes you're allowed. So if you look in this table here, you will see that channels 1, 2 and 3 you can record in the note range C3 to B8, C3 being down here, B8 being way up over here somewhere. But actually for the rhythm channel, or channel 4, you can only record note C5, which is kind of in the middle of the keyboard, this note here. And it's by modifying that note with different effect parameters we're going to try and create something resembling a percussion or drum sound. So I've spoken before, the first thing you want to do before you start recording anything is to set the tempo of your track using this F0, not F0x, this F parameter. I'm actually going to change the speed a little bit to F05, which is a little bit faster than things might start out on. And you don't really want to be recording anything else on that row, so it kind of takes that row out of action. So we'll start then with the first beat of the second bar, the row 4 as it's called. And you know that we can, I'm pressing space button, if you remember from the last tutorial, to toggle between playback and recording mode. So space when arms the recording mode. I'm selecting the first part of channel 4 here, and I can only actually record one note on this channel anyway, so it's going to be C5, which gives us that kind of crazy effect sound. And let's put a C5 at the beginning of each bar, which I'm going to essentially try to turn into something resembling a snare hit. All the way down. Okay. I'm just using the keyboard keys here to move my little blue rectangle cursor around. So going back up to the top now. So what information have we got here? We've got, if you remember from before, the first part of the channel is the note and the octave. We then have the instrument, which is instrument 11. We then have the green bit, which is actually nothing to do with us. We can ignore that. And then we have the effects part. Now I'm going to need to use effects to make this sound a certain way. And you can find a demo of that in the demo song that's provided with GB Studio. But I'm just going to scroll down to the effects list here just to remind you of what's available to us. We're going to be using the ECX effect, which is a note cut. And we're going to cut the note to try to make it sound slightly differently. So I'm in the effects part of this channel, and we're going to type E. It actually auto bumps you down to go back up with your cursor. EC2 for a duration of 2. And that is kind of what I'm using to give us a bit of a snare sound. You have to obviously bend your ears a little bit because we're talking chip tune here, but it will create a bit of rhythm anyway. I don't need to go all the way down just to demonstrate that. So we've got our EC2s telling the program how long we want that note to actually last. And then we should be able to press play song. Just ran into a slight technical glitch there, which is I actually had to save the document using the save button before it would start playing. So just click that save button, and then to play, you can press enter. And can you convince yourself that that sounds a little bit like a snare? I think it kind of does. You can actually save yourself time. You can actually highlight, drag, and copy that. And then we should be able to actually just paste it in from here to give ourselves a full set of repetitions. Let's paste that there. Right, so we've got snare sound. Tit, 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 tit. But what about bass drum sound, which is obviously going to be super important as well? Well, for the bass drum sound, we actually just need to change the duration from 2 to 1. So what if we want something like that would be snare, 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 bass, snare, 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 bass, snare. How does that sound? Not quite right, because we actually want to make that note, we want to make that note somewhere in the middle, like here. So we want to put a C5 in there, and we want to make that an EC1. What about that? Yeah, I'll take that. That sounds kind of like snare, snare, bass drum, snare. So let's get another EC1 in there. So we gotta change that one back to a 2. Snare, 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 bass drum. Give me an EC1, please. Snare. Where are we now? I do have to keep playing back. We could have a little bit of a snare flourish, couldn't we? So how about we put a couple of snare sounds. What if we do that? A couple of snare sounds in there, which are EC2s. EC2s. Yeah, I'll take that. Now, for the second measure, we can't really repeat that smoothly because we've got that F5 stuck in the way. So what I will probably do is copy this and we'll stick it into pattern 1, and we'll get rid of that speed counter there. And we can just put the snare sound in that we would like there, and put that as an EC2, I think. Yeah, okay, that's fine. So there we have it. What we've just done is we have given ourselves a bit of percussion. We've given ourselves a snare sound and a bass drum sound, and now we've got a bit of rhythm in place to go on to part 3, which is going to be about laying down some bass. Okay, see you next time.